Practical Wisdom for Modern Witches with your host, the Witch of Lupin Hollow.
Hello, Modern Witches. Welcome back to the Witch of Lupin YouTube channel. I'm Tanae Stewart, the Witch of Lupin Hollow, and I'm excited to talk to you today about my own personal journaling and grimoire practice. So, working with a grimoire has been important to me from the beginning of my spiritual journey. Although back then I called it a book of shadows. So a grimoire or book of shadows is basically any journal or book that a witch works with as part of their spiritual practice. It is an essential tool in their spiritual journey. So I'm going to show you a couple of different journals that I've worked with over the years, as well as the Chronicle Grimoire printed workbook from my Developing Your Daily Spiritual Practice program. I'll show you the actual book and walk you through how it works, and that's a book that's exclusively available for participants in the program, so it's a good little preview for you. So, my very first book of shadows, I don't have because I did lose that actually in the fire when my house burned down. My house was in a wildfire about 3.5 years ago. And so I lost all of my, books and journals and things during the fire and, of course, everything else. But I had already gotten rid of a lot of things. So at that time in my life, I thought that I was not interested in practicing anymore. I thought that it had been a phase and it was something I was no longer interested in, which of course obviously is not true, but it was where I was at in my life at the time. And so I had already gotten rid of most of my witchy books and journals and things like that. And honestly, I tossed a lot of things because it didn't resonate with me at the time. And then after the fire, of course, I came back to my practice and recommitted to that journey. But that first book of shadows, I do wish I had it because it was pretty cool. But what's interesting about it is that it was pretty impersonal. So my first grimoire or book of shadows was a large, it was probably about this big, and it was actually a cloth bound scrapbook. And so it was what's called post-bound, which means that it has little silver pegs along the binding. And so you can actually take the pegs out and add more pages and make the book thicker. And so I could actually add pages anywhere that I wanted. And so I had collected all of these materials to make pages for it. And so I had this textured linen black cardstock that were square because the book was square. And then I would take just regular copy paper and I would stain it with tea. So you brew a tea bag and you draw the tea bag over the page and it makes it look like old parchment. And then I would glue the tea stained pages to the black cardstock, and that was the base of each page, and then I would decorate them. And so I had pages about plants and the moon, and I had pages about my ancestral heritage and all of these different things. And it was probably kind of a combination of what I now call my practical grimoire, which is, practical information about magical tools and information, and my essence grimoire, which is sort of a record of who I am as a witch. But it wasn't particularly personal. It had some personal information in it, but it was, sort of me trying to emulate what I had seen other people doing. And so it wasn't as meaningful. And I think that's one of the reasons why I drifted away from that practice, was because not a lot about it was really personal to me and what I truly believed or was interested in. And so that, of course, now has become my motto, my battle cry constantly, is that your spiritual practice should be a true reflection and a unique and individual expression of your spirituality. And so when I recommitted to my practice about 3 years ago, I began this grimoire system. So I moved away from the term Book of Shadows, which I honestly, it was sort of it wasn't really an intentional change. But I did move towards the word grimoire, which resonates more with me now. It's a little bit more generic. Book of Shadows is often associated particularly with the Wiccan religion and tradition. And so that's not something that I follow or practice myself. And so I moved towards something, a little bit more general, something that can be applied to a broader tradition. But certainly plenty of people who do not practice Wicca in particular use the term Book of Shadows. You can definitely use them interchangeably. But when I recommitted to my practice, I started this sort of system that consists of 4 grimoires. So there's the practical grimoire, which, like I said, is, practical information. In that grimoire, I have pages about, certainly herbs and crystals and the moon cycle, but also about things like, different elements of my rituals. I include recipes, so tea recipes and spells that I've created, things like that. There's my lunar grimoire, which is a record of my practice with the moon cycle, which is a devotional practice for me, which is something I talk more about in the Developing Your Daily Spiritual Practice program, is working with devotionals. And so that grimoire is, a record of my rituals. I try to write in it every new and full moon. Then I have my Essence Grimoire, which, as I said, is a record of who I am as a witch. So that talks about ancestral heritage. It talks about my natal chart and my personal astrology, things like that. And then I have my Chronicle Grimoire. So this is the most important one. It's the one I work with the most. It's intended to be a daily journal. So this was basically my first Chronicle Grimoire. And I've actually shown this grimoire on videos here before, so you might have seen it. So this is just, a coil-bound notebook. In terms of mundane practicality, I have traditionally preferred coil-bound journals because you can actually open them all the way and lay them flat. And I like that because a lot of times I'm writing in this journal in bed. So the basis of this journal is to write down kind of the daily astrology. I like to write down what sign the moon is in, what phase the moon is in, and in the past I would write down kind of what that means. I don't really do that as much anymore because I'm familiar, and so I don't necessarily need to write it down, but it is still something I do from time to time. And then I write down my dreams. So I try to do this first thing in the morning. I wake up, I grab my journal, I write down the moon phase and sign, write down my dreams, think about what they might mean. And then I will also usually do a tarot card reading or an oracle card, and I'll write down that. And that's pretty much has been the case for 3 years. So this journal, pretty much any page in here is going to have, for example, this one has moon phase, waning gibbous in Pisces, tarot, the card I pulled and its meaning and what I thought about that, my dreams and what I had dreamt about that night. And this is from August 19th, 2016. So this is still basically the format I work in, but my journal looks a little bit different now. So I had this style, which is just like a coil-bound lined notebook for a couple of years, and I wrote different things in it. At various times I wrote down like what kinds of tea I was drinking that day. I wrote down, kind of an evening reflection on my day. For a while I was trying to track how much tea I drank per day. This particular day I drank 7 cups. That's slightly below average. So, I was trying out different things. This was the first of its kind, really. Now, the grimoire that I work with is actually a bullet journal. So this is my journal now. As you can see, it is no longer a coil bound because this type of journal actually lays totally flat on its own. There are times when it doesn't work quite as well. I do have to kind of lean over in bed to be able to write on it, or, put a the journal on a pillow. So at times it's not quite as functional, but I do love that it does at least lay totally flat without, bending the spine. And it's bound that way. So it's intended to be able to lay totally open. So the bullet journal format is a little bit new to me, but I really like it, and it lends itself very well to my practice. So the basic format is still the same. So this is from February 16th, 2019. So about 2.5 years after that last entry we looked at. And it has basically the same. So it has the date at the top in a little banner. So it's a little bit decorative. The moon phase, the moon sign, my dreams. There's space for tarot reading. I always like to have a little box to write in what the card is so you can easily see at a glance what the card was. So that has evolved. And then I write out, kind of my reaction to the card. I don't usually write out the traditional meaning anymore because I often work with oracle decks. But if I work with a tarot reading, a true tarot deck, I may write out the kind of official definition in a brief way and then my reaction to it. And then I have a little gratitude box at the bottom here. So theoretically, what I try to do is fill in this part in the morning, the tarot reading, the dreams, and then at the end of the day, write in the gratitude portion. I'm not always great about that, so it may be that the next evolution is to incorporate the gratitude portion into the morning practice, because, if something isn't working, then, you have the full prerogative within your spiritual practice to change whatever you want. The nice thing about the bullet journal format is that you can also do other kinds of things. So, for example, I have a yoga tracker here. You can see I haven't been great this month. I haven't practiced much, but this is a little yoga tracker. So it just has the dates of the month on one side. And then every day that I practiced yoga, I can write in what I did. So, I practiced a vinyasa on February 2nd. I did moon salutations on February 4th. So I can quickly see that, I haven't been practicing much. I should schedule some yoga into my day. I also have, my future log in here, which shows my words of the year, which are focus and flow for 2019. And then I have each month written out and kind of spiritual goals for each month. So this is a bullet journal, but it is specifically a spiritual bullet journal. So I try to keep really mundane stuff out of here. There's some meal planning, there's books I want to read, things like that. But to me, those are spiritual. Like, that is about being healthy. That is about being connected to my body. That's about, reading is something that I want to do more of. So those are things that are kind of a gray area, but there's a lot of room for that to be part of my spiritual practice. And those are great ways to incorporate your spiritual practice into your daily mundane life. Because when you try to keep those two areas separate, it doesn't work, because you are trying to fit your spiritual life into your reality instead of trying to adapt everything so that it flows together. So I do try to keep truly mundane things out of here, appointments and financials, things like that. That stuff doesn't go in here. This is a spiritual journal. But my personal goals, my private desires, those are things that can belong in here. So this is just sort of a more advanced version of my original Chronicle Grimoire format. And it's the same basic concept, which then eventually led to the printed Chronicle Grimoire. So this is the Chronicle Grimoire, which is part of my Developing Your Daily Spiritual Practice program. What's great about this is it's very adaptable. It's designed to be very adaptable. So this book is only available to participants of the program. So you can't buy it separately. You can only get it if you're part of the program. So most of the book consists of daily pages. So this is basically the, printed version of what I was just showing you within my own. So it has space for you to color in the moon phase at the top, which is nice. It has the date, the moon phase and sign. It has space for a daily card draw with a little box to write in your tarot card. It has room for your dreams, tools that you're working with, thoughts for the day, things like that. But then it also takes a little bit further. So it also has these weekly wisdom pages, which help you to sort of figure out what wisdom you've gained for this week. So a big part of the program is that you develop the 6 pillars of your spiritual practice. And so that's what this is. This is a reflection on your 6 pillars. So as you're developing them, as you're learning more about them and learning to connect with them, and how they can affect you on a daily and weekly basis, this is what this book is really for. And so, if those are things that you have wanted to explore in your practice, then I really encourage you to sign up for the program. There's a link below in the description, or, send me a message. You can email me, send me a DM on Instagram, and ask for more info. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. You can even ask questions in the comments of this video. So the Chronicle Grimoire is really sort of the public evolution of my journaling practice. So, I've learned over years of working with a journal about what works for me. So of course this journal is reflective of my own interests and my own practice. So it may not be exactly how you end up practicing, but it is designed to help you go from, having maybe a chaotic and cluttered spiritual life to having an organized foundation that allows you to create and maintain a daily spiritual practice throughout your life. So I really firmly believe that journaling is a huge part of building that kind of foundation, because it gives you something to reflect on. It gives you, years, as you can see from my own journals, years worth of, daily entries that don't take more than a few minutes, really. You're just jotting down your dreams, you're jotting down your hits that you're receiving from your intuition, and then you move on with your life, right? That's just part of your day-to-day life. It's not a separate piece that you have to sort of find time for. It's just part of your daily mundane but also magical routine. And so if you're interested in those kinds of topics, please comment, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have about journaling daily, creating a daily spiritual practice, working with a bullet journal as part of your spiritual practice, because that's become really powerful for me. Sort of the next evolution of the Chronicle Grimoire. So that's it for today. But comment below, subscribe to the channel so you can be notified of new videos coming up. And I'm excited to see you next time.